What's up, guys? I just got back from watching the much anticipated rematch between Canelo and Triple G. Had some time to digest what happened, and I have to say they delivered yet again with an amazing fight. Now, this won't be an in depth film study because that's definitely going to get a copyright strike from HBO, and instead, this will serve more as a technical review for how I saw the fight as it was happening live. And so the very first thing I noticed when the fight started was that Canelo immediately took the center of the ring at the start of every single round. And this was a huge adjustment in Canelo's game plan because not only did he take the center of the ring, he actually stood his ground and believed in his counterpunching ability. I've said before in my breakdown of the first fight that Golovkin has the most success when you try and fight mobile against him and pot shot him from the outside. We've seen in fights such as Golovkin versus Curtis Stevens and Golovkin versus Kell Brook that he struggles the most when fighters actually stand their ground and take the fight to him. So right away, Canelo, he would stand his ground in the center of the ring, and we would see a lot of the same from Golovkin. You know, the jab, slide to the left, look for the right hand. But there was a big difference in what Canelo did. Canelo threw a lot less jabs in the first three rounds than he did in the first three rounds of their first fight. Now, according to CompuBox, Canelo threw at least 10 jabs less than Golovkin in each of the first three rounds. Now, that's not surprising, but what is that Canelo instead took a wider stance than he normally does, a slightly low stance. So he would get a little bit under Golovkin. He would get a lot lower than Golovkin, took a very high and tight guard, and he pretty much forced the puncher, which is Golovkin, and forced him to box. And this was at least for me, very reminiscent of what Floyd Mayweather did to Conor McGregor. You know, have that high, tight guard and kind of just stand your ground and walk down the puncher, put pressure on him. And a lot of these early situations, Canelo would let Golovkin jab, and then when Golovkin would slide over to the left like he normally does, Canelo would look for the right hand over the top and time Golovkin as he slides in line of that right hand. And in the first fight, Canelo moved around much more and tried to counter every single jab with his own jab. This led to him, getting a little more tired out by the end of the fight. And then the other thing that Canelo did to take away Golovkin's right hand was to pivot to his left every time he saw Golovkin try to set up that right hand behind his jabs. Now, a lot of people might say, why didn't Golovkin throw his big right hand money punch more often? Well, the answer is simple. Canelo simply took that punch away from him, and Golovkin was really just reduced to mostly jabs early on. Now, that's not to say that Golovkin wasn't effective with his jab, actually quite the opposite. Golovkin's bread and butter is to probe you with soft jabs, pity-pat jabs, non-commitment jabs, and then when you try to counter with your own jab, he would pair your jab and counter your jab with his own jab, if that makes any sense. So he did that very well in this fight, and probably even more so in this fight than in his first fight with Canelo. And then the other thing I saw in this fight was that Canelo seemed a lot more feint-based in his approach when he came forward on the attack. When he was able to apply pressure on Golovkin by walking forward with his high guard, he would often feint down to his left, almost like how Juan Manuel Marquez does, and he would land a nice left hook to the head as Golovkin expects something to the body. And then speaking of the body punches, body shots were pretty much the key to success for Canelo in this fight. They were his key to victory. Almost every time Golovkin threw the right hand, if Canelo hadn't already countered it, with a jab or a right hand, he would slip or duck the right hand and come back with a right uppercut to the body, and this was probably his most effective punch throughout the entire fight. But then amazingly, towards the second half of the fight, Golovkin actually adjusted to these feints from Canelo. There was a couple of cases, I remember towards the middle of the fight, where Canelo would feint either a jab or left hook. It was pretty hard to tell while watching it live what kind of punch it was. And then Golovkin would immediately catch him with a short left hook. a quick short left hook as Canelo was fainting. This was like right after he fainted, so it was timed very well. This happened quite a bit and was very impressive from Golovkin. It really shows his ability to adapt on the fly. He also caught Canelo with a really beautiful right uppercut to the chin as Canelo did the Marquez feint down to his left. And he actually had Canelo rocked for a second there. It was probably the most effective punch of the entire fight. And I don't exactly remember which round it was in. But that brings me down to the last talking point of this fight, which was the score. Upon watching it live, my scorecard, I had it 115-113 for Golovkin, or in other words, 7 rounds to 5. And just like the first fight, I'll have to rewatch it and see if my score changes, but I had Triple G winning. Harold Letterman had the fight 116-112 for Golovkin, and the only difference I had between my card and his scorecard was I gave round 3 to Canelo, but other than that, my scorecard was identical to Harold Letterman's. But that just begs to ask the question, how exactly do you score a boxing match? You could look at how Canelo was coming forward, taking control of the center of the ring, and landing big punches, and you could give him rounds based on that. You could also look at how Triple G was throwing and landing more punches than Canelo, and give him rounds based on that. It all comes down to the preference of the judges, and that's really the messed up reality of combat sports. However, the very first criteria to judging is clean and effective punching. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm watching boxing, when I see one guy landing one big punch every now and then, it's very hard for me to give him the round when the other guy is both outworking him and outlanding him. So in a lot of those close rounds, I found myself giving a lot of them to Golovkin, thus my 115-113 score. But nonetheless, it was another instant classic between these two. It was a razor close fight, and definitely didn't disappoint from a technical standpoint. Here's to seeing a third one.